Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Matt Willson SFL Kickoff Show. I'm Mike Daggs. He's Gerald Smith. Behind the scenes, our production crew of Cameron Irvine, Ron Haynes, back in the saddle this week, and a special producer in-house, in studio with us, Jeffrey Daggs, pressing some buttons for us tonight. We welcome you to the semifinal week of Season 24 in the Simulation Football League. Gerald, we have two producers and a video guy.
I mean, we finally made it. We had the opening act to start out the playoffs.
We sure did.
We got special videos,
Yep.
and we get extra personnel. Our budget is rising. I wish they would pay us more, but
Yeah, more than the nothing.
The nothing.
Yeah.
I'll take a penny.
Yeah, peso even, Viva la Mexico. Listen, let's recap the previous week, and then we're going to go through getting everybody ready for these semifinals. We've got some great games coming up tonight. This is going to be a lot of fun. These teams, all four of them, have a great shot at winning a championship this season. And, I mean, we'll break down these games. I really don't know how they're going to shake out. It could go either way. But normally, during our semifinal show, we would recap a team's season and how they got here along the way. But that's been fairly well documented throughout the season. And we gave Ron Haynes a couple of weeks off now. We had to put him back to work. So instead, we are going to take that extra time that we have, and we're going to spotlight not just an offensive and defensive player, but we're going to spotlight 4 players total. 2 on offense, 2 on defense, 1 player from each of the 4 teams that made it to the semifinals. Looking forward to being able to spotlight somebody from each of the 4 teams. And we've got a little bit of a SFL convention teaser to say something special that's going to be happening at the convention this season.
I'm kind of staring at it.
Yeah. So, it's me. He's staring at me. No, it's not me. I will be there, though.
He will be there.
Yeah, we'll do a live show there.
Yeah.
Ron won't be there, though. He's going to have to do some videos for us ahead of time.
Yeah, I wonder how many dirty looks I'm going to get this convention like I did last one.
Probably a lot. You've made some enemies along the way during our show.
It's okay.
All right, let's talk about what happened last week in the quarterfinals to get us to this point. Just like we've had happen several seasons now in a row, all 4 of the top 4 seeds have made it now to the semifinals. All 4 home teams won, and it basically made it so that if you made it to the wild card, it didn't even matter. That was just for fun. We just filled in a week for fun in the wild card. You went to the quarterfinals. If you weren't in the top 4, you didn't make it into the semis, and here we are once again. It started off with Minnesota and Baltimore. Minnesota out in front. Listen, all the away teams were out in front early in their games, and the home teams ended up coming back in at the 11th hour and getting it. Baltimore narrowly won that one, 30-27. That was a great one.
Yeah, look, and I was very surprised as that game started getting there. I'm like, oh my God! I said we're in a situation where we might have some of an upset happening in Baltimore, but Baltimore scoring really, really late and pushed themselves to another semifinal.
Sure did. Yep, Vancouver beat Denver 30-17. That was, when the score looks a little bit more lopsided in a couple of these other games, Mexico City and Albuquerque 31-16, Mexico City getting the win. But, that one, actually both of those, Denver out in front in that one, and Albuquerque up 10-0 at one point over Mexico City.
Yeah, look, and it just goes to show that the competition is getting a lot tighter than what it has been in seasons past. So, I was very surprised to see all these games were really tight as it was at the half, too.
Yeah, yep. Fort Worth and Washington, another game. Again, Fort Worth, they had the lead at one point. Very low-scoring game in this case. Washington getting the win 16-13, but Fort Worth had a good shot at it.
Yeah, look, and they were playing great in that game. Look, and they slowed down that powerful offense that Washington has. And Fort Worth, they were looking at making a semifinal, but Washington pulled it out.
Not quite. So let's look at the semifinal schedule. Let's see who we've got on the docket coming up tonight. We're going to start things off tonight with Vancouver at Washington. You've got 9-3 at 10-2. All 4 of these teams, top 4 in the league. I mean, we'll break down this game in some more detail later on, but what a great way to start the semifinals. And then at 9 p.m., we've got Mexico City at Baltimore. Baltimore back in the semifinals, missing it last season. Washington, definitely worth mentioning. Washington in the semifinals for the first time ever. I mean,
ever.
Obviously it's their first season as Washington, but as a franchise, they've never made it this far, and to be 10-2 hosting a semifinal game in the first season as a Trident, that is very impressive stuff.
Yeah, look, and leadership changed. Leadership and actually new identity is what they got, and they made the most of it, winning 10 total games, not including what they won last week. So at best one of the best teams in the league right now.
For
Number
sure.
1 seed.
Yeah. Well, Baltimore was the number 1 seed. I think
Well,
Washington was number 2.
Well, it don't
Washington
matter.
was number 1.
10-2.
They'd say they're both 10-2.
It's 1A and 1B.
One
Let's
A
call it that.
and 1B. So wait, so what's Mexico City? They're sitting at 8-4.
Look, I tell you what,
We're just 4.
that eighth win you guys have, everybody has 9 wins. Vancouver's got 9.
Yeah.
Baltimore and Washington has 10. That 8 wins don't look impressive at
No,
all.
no, 8-4. It's like, well, who's those slouches? That's me.
We had to let the defending champs in there. That's what that's about.
Yeah, it's just kind of like a pity prize.
Oh, they got it last year. Give them a chance to defend it.
Wow. All right. Well, Vancouver and Washington will kick things off for us in just a little bit here. Tyler Falk and Eddie Gage on the call. And then, like I said, at 9 p.m., we've got Mexico City, Baltimore, Camera Duty, Anthony Ellison. 4 of the finest broadcasters that we have on the broadcast crew calling our semifinals tonight. These, I've always said it, these are my favorite games in the entire season. I like them better than the championship. Semifinal night, that's where it's at.
These 2 games right here are by far some of the best games you'll ever see all season.
All right, let's jump right into our player highlights. My first one, my selection for the first offensive player spotlight from the quarterfinals, none other than Baltimore Vultures wide receiver Ivory Irvin. 12 receptions, 163 yards. He averaged 14 yards per reception. His longest was 22 yards. And Gerald, watch some of these highlights, and look how beautiful Ron put these videos together. I can't say enough good things, but 22 yards down the field. All of Ivory Irvin's receptions were just big chunks. You're going to see, you saw that one. You're going to see another one that looked very, very similar. Different play, but it's the same route. You see, he just does a post route here, gets himself open. Jack Wigmore has all day back there in the pocket to find Ivory Irvin down there, 21 more yards, and he's able to pick it up. Every play that he had wasn't necessarily that easy, though. You see, he's going to do another post route because Ron put pretty little arrows on the screen for me, make it nice and easy. But look at right between 3 defenders, and is still able to haul it in. Great ball placement by Jack Wigmore, who could have also been the offensive player spotlight. But, Ivory Irvin, 163 yards. Ironically, on those 12 catches and 163 yards, he never found the end zone. But he did do other things as well. Punt returns. Instead of just catching footballs, on offense, he's also getting things done as a special teamer. He was able to get, some nice punt return yardage there. That was only 13-yarder, but as you know, punt returns aren't really very easy to come by, massive yards. So picking up 13, not too shabby. Meanwhile, in the third quarter, 15-yarder straight over the middle, moves the team into the red zone. They're approaching 3 minutes to go here in the third quarter. And remember, this is a tight game. This isn't a game where Baltimore was just demolishing their opponent. It was close all the way to the end. You saw the score, 27-20. Baltimore's losing here, so they're going to keep on throwing and, getting closer and closer to putting up some more points. This is the sort of target that you need to help your team win games, to have somebody that is that reliable. Sets them up with a 4th and inches here, but somebody that's that reliable, 163 yards already, gets them down into scoring range. He doesn't just catch the ball, though, Gerald. Look, right here, blocking. You need your receivers to do more than just catch the ball. In that case, he blocked. He set up the key block for that touchdown run. Look at him right here, just totally holding that defensive player at bay. And it allows Murray to score the go-ahead touchdown, seconds to go on the clock. That's a clutch player of the game.
Yeah, look, and it highlighted every single thing that a player at his position can do.
Yeah.
Catching the pass, which is the primary duties, right? And then once he do it, he is in special teams as well. And what he does his job in the run game by sealing the edge for his team to get that go-ahead touchdown with 17 seconds to go. So for him, very, very everything he could possibly do, great. He did it last week and helped his team reach the semifinals.
Yeah, he sure did. And, Baltimore's going to be, obviously, as we mentioned, facing off against Mexico City. So if they have that kind of player on offense, we better hope that Mexico City's got somebody on defense that we could talk about, and maybe that's somebody that can hold Baltimore at bay.
Yeah, look, and this player spotlight is someone who has done that. My defensive player spotlight is Mexico City Aztec middle linebacker, number 40, John Fowler. You
Yes,
can see his
sir.
stats: 7 tackles, 1 TFL, 2 interceptions, and a pass defense. And what we're going to start out with right here, as it gets highlighted, you're going to see it's a sign of things to come right here. What's he do? He just misses it right there, right as Ron Haynes slows it down, right over the fingertips. And he's chasing. He's like, I don't know if that's going to really happen again. But he's a complete linebacker right here. What's he do? Notices coming right there. Running back coming through, seals the gap, hits him right at the line of scrimmage, keeps it to a minimal gain, right? And what he does right here, again, looking at it, Reed coming up on the line, goes right in there, shoots the gap, takes on the fullback to actually slow down what they're doing, taking some out of the way so that his teammates can actually get themselves back in the game. Now, this play right here was a game changer for this squad. What's he do? Reads, react, and actually stiff arms a guy right there to knock him to the ground. This right here turned the game around for his first interception of the day. And as we look at the replay, you're going to see how this happens, right? He just finds that zone and realizes, hey, look, I'm going to read and react, stand right at the quarterback, know where he's going to go, picking it off, and it changed the momentum of the game. As we go black and white, you can see Fowler highlighted tremendously right here. So what's he do? Again, he can go down the field, and look the way he just follows it down there, right? Reads, react, and just get himself to close down and shut it down from it being a huge gain, right? And what's he do right here? Again, he's playing back there. Just realize, hey, this is what I got. Sky's up. Last time he skied up, he missed it with his fingertips.
He's got the hops now.
He went up with both hands and said, this ain't happening again. I'm bringing it down to get my team back in. And as you can see, the score was 13-7 at the time, right? So he's still getting his team back in it, right? And guess what? And look, you see it now. They went down and they were able to score on that drive. They took the lead. John Fowler's like, hey, I still got it right here. What I'm doing, I'm trying to run back. I'm playing deep center field. Didn't come up with it, but he's like, he felt really good about those 2 interceptions. Say, hey, I'm going to get a little bit deeper, see if I can get me another one. Didn't quite come down with right there, but was able to kind of shut it down. So, look, and this is another thing right here. Still, even though he's able to play the pass, look at the way he shoots the gap right there. Gets the TFL, forces the 4th down play right there, goes in there, shoots the gap, blows him up and everything. And that is a guy, I think, that you guys have in some ways leaned on because he's able to produce things like that each and every week. It surprises me. He's one of the most consistent players on the team outside of the Hall of Famer Max Jackson and the Hall of Famer Jeffrey Daggs. Those produce every single week.
Right.
High tackle volume, everything is all over the field. But John Fowler has been consistent. He's probably one that a lot of people don't even realize he's really, really good. He's one of these really underrated players at linebacker, and he comes through each and every week for you guys. And last week, he helped turn it around. When you guys were down to 10, helped turn it around, and you guys jumped on that momentum and just kept rolling.
And he helped, going all the way back to the season 23 championship game. It was a close game with Canton, back and forth, low scoring at first. And then, Canton ends up putting points on the board first, which is usually they score first. That's the final nail in the coffin. It's just like, well, game over. And John Fowler's like, not yet.
Not so fast, my friend.
No, he dropped back into coverage. He got himself a pick. The momentum changed in that game, and that's the sort of thing that he does for the Aztecs week in and week out. He took a break from playing a few seasons ago now. I reached back out to him in the offseason, that offseason, and said, hey, we need you back. It was the season that Dexter Jackson had decided to leave the Aztecs and went on to Fort Worth. And we needed a middle linebacker, and Fowler had been the outside linebacker for us. And I said, well, how about you come back and you can take over middle linebacker? And he's like, do you think that's I'll be good at that? And I'm like, yes, I do.
And he's proved it.
Yeah,
he proved you were right and proved something to himself.
Yep, absolutely. So and listen, these are 2 of the key players that are going to have an impact in this game that's coming up later on tonight. Mexico City at Baltimore. It's a rematch from Week 13 where Baltimore did get the win 23-20. In fact, these teams have met 14 previous times. This is the 15th meeting. Baltimore, they've won almost all of them. I like to talk about Fort Worth and how they're my nemesis because they just constantly beat me. I love those guys, down there, Nacho and Hacker. but thorn in my side is what they are, you know. Baltimore, just as bad. They've won 11 times out of the previous 14. In fact, they're on a 6-game winning streak in this matchup. Mexico City has not won in Baltimore since week 4 of season 11. That was August of 2018. Jeffrey was 10. You know, it's ridiculous how long ago that was. 4 of the previous meetings, though, have been in the playoffs, and 2 of those have been in the semifinals. So this is the 3rd time in 15 matchups that has been a semifinal matchup between Mexico City and Baltimore. You know, these teams just seem to regularly find a way to get here, but historically, Baltimore has always been the one to shut down Mexico City's hope of a title. Tonight, the number 1 seed Vultures, winners of the North, they take on the number 4 seed Aztecs, winners of the South, for the final spot in the season 24 title game. And, you know, statistically, Mexico City actually has the edge on Baltimore for once. You know, they're number 3 in points scored, number 2 in points allowed, with Baltimore still up there. They're number 7 in points scored, number 4 in points allowed. I mean, you know, number 1 for a reason, right? You know, we've always talked about in the past, like the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. Well, what happens when you have 2 unstoppable forces that meet 2 immovable objects? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, in the intro, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen in these
blow
games.
up.
Yeah, it's just the universe is going to just collapse when these teams face off. You know, both teams feature a season 24 all-star quarterback, a season 24 all-star receiver, season 24 all-star offensive lineman, and a season 24 all-star defender. Heck, Mexico City even has an all-star kick returner, right? Anything could happen tonight. It should be a really good one. Break it down for us.
Look, Mexico City, as everybody knows, they are the reigning champs, and they did their thing by beating Albuquerque handily with a second-half performance, which you guys did extremely well last week, right? You guys are being down 10-0, right, in the first quarter, but outscored from that point of being down 10-0, outscored Albuquerque 31-6 in the final 3 quarters of that game to secure the win. Quarterback Jordan Sight, despite him having 4 turnovers himself, 2 fumbles near the goal line.
Yeah.
And he had 2 interceptions.
On the goal line. They
were
and
2 interceptions as well. He had a total of, you know, combined 381 yards combined. He had 340 passing, 41 rushing, 3 touchdowns on the day, 2 passing, 1 rushing. And who was he throwing the ball to? Wide receiver Noe Terrazas, who had 8 receptions for 139 yards. Also, tight end Bill Cherry, one of the most underrated tight ends in the league. Bill Henry, one of the most underrated tight ends in the league, in my opinion. Nobody talks about him, even though they should. The way you guys utilize him is amazingly good, right? He had 12 receptions, 99 yards, and a touchdown. Look, and they were great at getting open all game. And what I saw, it made it quite easy for Jordan Sight to be able to find them how open they were getting at times, right? The run game was also solid as well, with Sight, right, getting his fair share yardage. Bentley and Morrison contributing to just over, 100 yards on the ground while averaging 4 yards a carry as well.
That's what gets it done.
It's really, really good. So offensively, look, this week, you're going to have to bring the same type of output, as you had last week offensively, but we're going to need to reduce those turnovers. Yeah. You guys lost a turnover battle last week 4-2.
Not going to win games like that often.
The good thing about it is you guys converted 57% on 3rd down last week, which is really good for you guys, but the offense has got to clean up those mistakes. If you guys can do it, it won't give Baltimore those extra opportunities.
And the defense did a great job, in their own right. You talked about the offense converting 57% on 3rd down. The defense only allowed a 25% conversion on 3rd down. And after giving up some yards and some points early on, they didn't allow a touchdown after that first quarter.
Yeah, and you guys held their run game in check as well, right? Only allowed 66 yards, of rushing on the day last week. Look, and you got Jeffrey Daggs and Max Jackson, who I mentioned are Hall of Famers. They just were tackling machines last week. A combined 25 tackles between the 2 of them, right? And this is from the safety position, but they played a line of scrimmage extremely, extremely well.
Right.
So, look, and the pass rush seemingly came alive for you guys last week. It was very, very surprising to see.
We saved it for last.
Former Rev, right? Go Revs. Defensive tackle Chance Walk got 2 sacks last week, which is really, really good. But like I mentioned before, right, with the player spotlight, John Fowler had a great game and was the spark you guys needed to turn the momentum around with his first of 2 interceptions on the game early on in the first quarters. Look, I think you guys need to get pressure on the quarterback like last week, along with playing tough defense like you did last week. The key players for your team is going to be Jordan Sight, right? Is he going to run? He's going to pass. He's good at both, right? So we'll see what's going to happen. Bill Henry, he is going to be a difference maker to me. If they find out how to stop him, I think it does stuff. The defensive line, getting pressure on the quarterback, along with Daggs and Jackson, the Hall of Famers, doing what they do. It's key players you guys are going to need to be successful.
All right, well, Baltimore on offense, they had quite a comeback last week. They're the 5-time champs for a reason.
Yeah, look, 5-time champs. They were down 27-13 at the half. Look, and when they had a terrible final minute, they gave up 2 touchdowns in the final minute of the first half, and it wasn't looking so good.
Oh, the Aztecs were already getting the stadium ready to host the semifinals against Minnesota.
And guess what happened? In the second half, what did they do? They just proceed to shut out Minnesota in the second half. Look, and the offense had a very good output despite 3 turnovers, right? They, too, along with you guys, lost a turnover battle, but only 3-2, not 4-2. Wigmore threw for nearly 400 yards, but only had 1 touchdown.
Yes.
Running back Warren Murray rushed for 2 touchdowns as well, but they didn't have he did not have his typical rushing output that we're used to seeing. Third down was huge for them, converting 52% on third downs, and they scored with 17 seconds left to win the game. Right, look,
heart-wrenching for Minnesota.
Dude, yes,
listen, I've been there. I know you've been there.
Right,
you've seen last second losses.
Look, I lost on a darn kick return. I thought we won the game. Yeah. They damn near returned for touchdown. Anyway, look, Ivory Irvin and Benji Matson, their tight end, are the key players that are that they're going to need. Along with like the turnovers and reducing that, they have to score early against Mexico City. I think the best at defense.
The Baltimore defense didn't look so great in the first half, but in the second half, like you said, shut them out,
turned it up to the max. And we've seen Baltimore's defense isn't as good as we typically have seen them in the past. The offense is great, but the defense was just kind of left a lot to be desired. They're not doing a whole lot of much else. But guess what they did? They turned it up in the second half last week, right? So look, and the defense was able to slow down their opposing offense and held the opposing quarterback to 39% completions. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that against Jordan Sight, but it was really, really impressive. It only allowed 60 yards on the ground. Look, they forced 2 turnovers, sacked the quarterback twice. And the thing about it, I can't really highlight any specific players because they play amazingly like one collective unit, which allows them to stack it. And they're winning games at a really close thing. So it's like it's crazy.
I've referenced them before as, for all the Star Trek fans, they remind me of the Borg. They're just a collective. And as a collective, they adapt. They see what you do well, they adapt. You think you have them figured out, they adapt. Getting ready for them this week was hell. Absolute hell. Because I don't know what they're going to do.
And you're going to have fun, right? The key players for them is going to be quarterback Jack Wigmore, how he does it, how he throws the ball to Irvin and Matson and its entire defensive unit, as you call them the Borg, and see how well you guys, they're going to attack you guys and how well you're going to attack them.
We'll find out at 9 p.m. this evening as that game gets started. Let's get into the matchup that's coming up next. First, we're going to highlight some players from these 2 squads. For me, the key player to getting the Washington Trident their victory last week was none other than #throw it to the tight end, number 43 himself, Azami Mihata. I love a good tight end, man. And 11 receptions, 191 yards. He averaged 17 yards per reception, and he had a 31-yarder on the day. Converting key third downs. That was a 3rd down and 6. He picks up 13 yards. Fast forward just a little bit longer, he's going to pick up yet another 3rd down conversion. I mean, look how he just runs straight up the seam, gets himself open, finds space, and here you go. Now he's out of the backfield this time. Just goes a little bit to the outside, runs straight down the seam, bam, converts a 3rd down and 4, 31 yards down the field. We talked about Ivory Irvin and how he was able to help his team in multiple ways. Well, that a tight end is basically the Swiss Army knife of that offense. They not only can catch passes, but you're also going to see he did the same sort of thing that Ivory Irvin did. He's going to pick up some key blocks. Watch him right here as he just takes this defensive end and says, you're not going to have any part of this play. We're just going to be sitting here dancing while the running back just scoots right by you. And that's the sort of thing that can help your team win. But all night long, he's just being a total security blanket for your guy, Tommy Utah, as he just picks up another 21 year. Yeah, go ahead. Go Revs. You can say it. But then he's able to get his team down here into the red zone. You just saw a 21-yard reception, right? Well, deja vu, because here it comes again. Bam, another 21 yards all the way down into the red zone down there. 5 receptions for 88 yards, and we're only at the half. There's still another 100+ yards to go here, Gerald. He's going to get another 20-yard catch, even another 20-yarder after this one. The tight end, it's a position that you can't utilize it enough, in my opinion. You have a good tight end that'll open up your run game. It'll open up your pass game. It just gives you all kinds of options. And it's great to see how Washington's using him, lining him up as a traditional tight end. And again, another one out of the backfield there. It makes them so multidimensional with how they're using him on this offense to be able to, put him in situations where he's got these one-on-one matchups with linebackers and, is able to find just wide open holes straight down the seam. I mean, the way that they're using him is fantastic, and that's really what's helped them all season long. I heard Mark Lopez during the one of the quarterfinal calls. It was during Washington's game. Him and Chris Curtis were on the call, and he said, Azami Mihata, he was an all-star snub because he wasn't in the all-star game. Listen, he had some really great games, but he had some quiet games too. I'm sure you're probably going to talk about him as a key player. They're going to need to get Azami Mihata involved in this game against Vancouver if they're going to win this one, because he's just been so dynamic. He's had games where he's only had a few yards. He's had games where he's had hundreds. He had one game where he had 4 touchdowns, and then he had a lot of games where he had none. So I love to see how they're using him. He had a fantastic game here in the quarterfinals, but they really can't afford to have another quiet game. This is one of their all-star players, at least in spirit. They've got to get him involved.
Look, and they're going to have to see how they attack the seams, right? As you can see in the highlights, he had a success, right? Coming out of the backfield, hitting the seam, and even off the line, hitting the seam. So whoever Vancouver's going to have trouble, I think, they got the game plan for that, right? Because he made such an impact in this game and was one of the reasons why they actually won the game.
All right, well, if there's anybody that can slow him down, it could be this defender on Vancouver that you're about to highlight.
Yep. So, look, my player spotlight, my number 2 player spotlight, not that they're ranked in any way, shape, or form, is Vancouver Legion outside linebacker number 55, Marquise Reed. As you can see, 6 tackles, 6 TFLs, 4 sacks on the day. And you're going to find out right here. What he does right early in the first quarter, comes right around the edge
it going
so
early.
Fast. Beats the left tackle. The left tackle has no idea what's going on. Like, who is this guy? What is going on? Is this how my day's going to be? He says. Look, he says, I don't know. But we're going to find out. What he does comes right around the edge right there. Gets a TFL as the running back tries to spin loose. Nope, it's not having. Reed says, I'm not having it. We're just going to shut that down right here. Here comes another one right off the edge. Look, the left tackle does not even know that he's coming. I don't know how you can't see that man coming. But what happened? He does it again, gets a second sack so fast right there. So, look, and what's he do right here, right? He has a little bit of a lull right here, but he comes in. Hey, look, he still follows the play, kind of loops around and comes back in and gets himself in a situation to make the tackle the way he pursues the runner on that play, right? And here we are. We're fast-forwarded to the fourth quarter. Guess what happens here? Comes in there and gets another sack unabated. They expected the running back to pick him up, but they didn't do it. He just comes right around the edge and just murders the quarterback. And he's in a situation in the game where Denver needed to get back in it, and you can't let these things happen. It's like the running back couldn't get past the quarterback to help get it done. Look, and what's he do? Here it is again. He's playing right on the line. Look, we're doing it again. Looking at it right here. Jeez. Untouched again, unblocked. They don't see him. Too many people coming. He goes in there, get his 4th sack on the day, setting the tone early on and finishing off with a sack right at the end of, the game like this, coming around the edge right when Denver needed to get something going, and they just aren't able to do it, right? So here it is right here, and you can see it right there. 7.5 sacks he had, right? And he had 4 tonight. And, look, ending a game like that and being dominant early on, setting the tone. Look, he had somewhat of a little bit of a lull right in the middle. Yep. But you set the tone early, and then you make the offense stink and start to change how they, how their blocking schemes are going, everything. Right. And what do? He comes back in there and becomes dominant once again in the fourth quarter when it matters, when they want to just seal the game, and they done it. Marquise Reed, very, very good game last week. 6 tackles, 6 TFLs, 4 sacks, and 1 assisted tackle on the day. Congratulations to you, because the way you guys played, looking pretty scary to me.
Yeah, pretty scary indeed. I mean, Tommy Utah is going to have to keep eyes on the back of his helmet somehow, because the scary thing was how quick he got around that left tackle, and he was just in the backfield. Timing that snap perfectly. That's the sort of defensive play that not only helped them win that game last week, but now that's on film. So now teams have to look and say, well, we gotta do something about that.
See, and you want to know the strangest thing, because Vancouver, and I'm gonna touch on it next whenever we start breaking down the game, but they're really good up front with the front 4.
Sure.
And what they bring tackle. So when they were planning on offense to stop this pass rush, it was with the interior linemen, right, on the defensive front.
Yeah.
They weren't expecting the linebacker to come outside, so their blocking scheme, and they just couldn't adapt as the game went on to even adjust to that. So they game planned so much for the front 4, and they wasn't expecting it to come from the second level defenders.
Yeah, Marquise Reed looked very similar to Canton's season 22 and season 23 Kevin Brackett. Yeah, for sure. That's like when I was watching the game, I'm looking at the jersey. I'm like, it says Reed, but is that Kevin Brackett?
Is that Brackett?
That's Kevin Brackett out there. It's got to be. Yeah, I mean, that's what it looked like, and they used him. In an absolutely fantastic way. So I just want to take a minute and thank Ron Haynes for all the work that he's done this season for us. I know we've mentioned it a few times throughout the season, but Ron Haynes takes time out of his day to put all those videos together for us and for you to be able to see our offensive and defensive player spotlights. When we decided to add that segment in this season to our show, it was basically just going to be the two of us on camera talking about these guys. And, I thought, well, let me at least just ask Ron if he'll do some videos for us. And without even hesitating, he jumped right up and said, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to. And I said, okay, great. And I thought, okay, we'll get some highlight videos. But the extra time and effort that he puts in with highlighting the player and showing you as the viewer where to look and what's about to happen with the routes and things like that. And on top of that, he also prepares us notes. All we have to do is show up.
Yeah, it's like it makes it like, oh yeah, we just pick players and Ron does all this work
for us.
I can't thank him enough, because look, I feel like what we do, and we ask a favor of him, and he went above and beyond what we could ever ask for. Thank you, Ron. You're amazing. Don't let anyone tell you any different. You're awesome.
We love you, Ron. Appreciate it. All right, let's get into the game that's coming up next. We're only about 12 minutes away from kickoff, Gerald. We've got Vancouver at Washington to get these semifinals started. This is another rematch from earlier on this season, and one of Washington's only 2 losses the entire way this season. They met all the way back in Week 7 in Vancouver. The Legion, they would pile on points as they have all season long to their opponents. They won that one 40-23. It was a game where I think Washington went into it feeling like they would need to throw early and often, putting it into the hands of their all-star quarterback, Tommy Utah, 58 times to try and outpace and outscore the Legion. 4 interceptions, though, would be his undoing in that one. Washington seems to have learned things along the way. I talk about Baltimore being able to adapt. Washington is another one of those teams that's already proven this staff, they know how to make adjustments. They know how to adapt, and they know how to fix their own mistakes. They adapt very well. Now in the semifinals, neither team has lost in the past several weeks. I think their last loss, they won each of them won in Week 13. They haven't lost since then. But the season ends tonight for one of these two teams. About 2 hours from now, we'll know which one. We've already talked about the whole thing about the 2 unstoppable forces meeting the 2 immovable objects. Well, guess what? Here we are again. 2 unstoppable forces are about to meet 2 more immovable objects. You got Vancouver, number 1 in points scored, number 1 in points allowed. Washington's number 2 in points scored, and number 6 in points allowed. These 2 teams also feature all-star players from season 24 all over the roster on both sides of the ball. Literally anything can happen. These have got to be the 4 most powerful teams in the SFL to face off in the semifinals in recent memory. They're all so well evenly matched. It's I'm telling you, the universe could end, but we'll see. Break it down for us. What's Vancouver doing?
Vancouver, and this is just my opinion, I think this team is playing the best football out of all 4 remaining teams in the playoffs right now. And this team was actually trailing by 3 points last week.
Yeah.
And they were able to shut down Denver and outscore them 16-0 in the second half. Look, and quarterback Christian Brown, right? He was able to limit his mistakes. He only had one interception on the day, which was huge. He went on to throw for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns by passing 2. The Hall of Fame Brett Killian and Nick Lockett, who you know very well.
Oh, yeah.
And tight end John Michael Sutton, who I know very well, who all collectively had 16 receptions and had 280 receiving yards.
Yeah.
Of the 306 passing
Darn
yards
near all of them
that Brown had.
Yep.
So those 3 were pretty dominant during the game. The run game was decent as well, just getting just under 100 yards on the day. We know running back Ike McBride and Mateo Bravado, who we all know Bravado is probably one of the best fullbacks in the league right now. They averaged 4 yards a carry on the game last week, which was pretty good. The offense, was steady the entire game. And they had zero panic. Even though they were down at times, zero panic. And they basically did what I kind of expect them to do.
Yep.
They smothered down the opposing defense, and they converted 50% on 3rd down last week. Look, and as we know, hey, they beat Washington last week, right? In week 7, 40-23. Look, they need that same type of production as they had last week offensively. And also what they had in week 7 to, I think, best this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Christian Brown, he's the only quarterback that's playing in the semifinals that is not on the all-star roster for season 24. He was the runner-up. So I know the entire list of the scoring hasn't been released yet, but I can tell you here. See, you should watch the show. You learn fun facts. Christian Brown scored 5th, and it was close. Sebastian Synergy, the only quarterback to make the all-star team that's not here in the semifinals, but Christian Brown every bit as good. And speaking about every bit as good and smothering opponents, how about the defense? They held Denver to a grand total of nothing in the second half.
Nothing. Right? Nothing on it. But
no points.
But I do think the story was the pass rush of Vancouver.
Yeah.
Like I said, particularly, it comes from the defensive line all season long.
Yep.
But they got it off the edge from Marquise Reed. As we know, we just highlighted him, everything else. And guess what? He only had 1.5 sacks all season. So talking about bringing out a secret weapon and doing something nobody expects was him blitzing like he did. He only had 1.5 on the season, and guess what he got? He got 4.5. He didn't get 4.5, but he got 5.5 total on the season. 4 sacks for him last week. He dominated the Denver offensive line, and they had no answer on how to stop him at all. Due to the pressure that they applied, they was able to force 2 interceptions, right? And also, I was impressed, with them of how, even though Denver was still in the game, they just kept grinding and stayed the course on defense, and it worked for them. They got the key plays when they needed it. Their key players for this team this week, Christian Brown.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. He's going to have to play well on his side, and I do think they need to get more out of McBride and Bravado, and I do think if they can get that pass rush off the edge and up the middle with the defensive line, I think they can make something really good happen for themselves against Washington. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, they certainly did well against Washington back in week 7, but Washington this time will be the home team. And let's talk about their win last week. It was a very close game, Fort Worth in it all the way to the end. Talk about that.
I think Washington, this is me being clear here, I think Washington came away with a steal of a win last week. In my opinion, I think they got out of there with the win because Fort Worth was playing really, really good, right? So look, their opponents forced them offensively into situations that they weren't comfortable with at all, right? Look, and the crazy thing about it, their offensive output in terms of yards was very good. They got nearly 400 yards of offense and even converted a whopping 80% on 3rd downs.
That's crazy.
It's kind of, and you would think that they would put a lot more points, but they didn't, right?
Yep.
And they only had 1 turnover, and that was a fumble by one of the running backs that they had.
Right.
So, look, with how good their offensive output is, they just lacked the scoring that you typically would get along with those yards, and they have the number 2 scoring offense in the league. So
just not last week.
Yeah, and they only put up 16 points.
Yeah.
But the big highlight, how you light right here, was tight end Azami Mihata had a great game. We already mentioned the stats, but he had no touchdowns.
None.
Him tearing up the seam like he can. Look, you want to get that guy a touchdown. You want to put those in the end zone, right? So they have to correct this if they want to beat one of the best defenses, in my opinion, the best defense left in the playoffs in Vancouver.
Yeah, for sure. Washington's defense is no slouch either. In fact, they were really the glue that held the team together last week, and they really helped in a huge way to get the win.
Look, and they only forced a turnover, had a couple of sacks, but more importantly, they had this crazily bend but don't break type defense. So with them, right? Look, and they held it and they limited it the amount of points the opponent scored.
Yep.
That's how they got it, because their offense wasn't doing so well. Because credit Fort Worth, they played really well. They game plan really well. Look, but once again, they will need their defense to step up against what? The league's #1 scoring offense, and also the league's #1 total offense.
Yeah.
So you got a lot on your hands right now to try and stop. You're at home. Look,
That'll help.
the ball's in your court at this point.
There
You
you
can't
go.
get a better situation than what you have right now at home playing a team like this and their key players. Utah cannot repeat what he did in Week 7. Cannot have that happen. Mahata has got to find the seams and get in the end zone, and their defense is going to have to put it all together and actually try and stop the #1 offense in the league.
And that game is just minutes away. Both of these games tonight, like we talked about, rematches from earlier on this season. These teams both know each other very well. They've seen the film from the previous time they played. They've seen the film since then. These just are going to be some intense games. I just can't wait for them. All right, before we get into our picks, I talked about at the beginning that we would tease something that would be revealed at the SFL convention. We've got the 25th anniversary season coming up here in the SFL. The convention's going to be in Baltimore, Maryland. If you haven't heard that yet, then you apparently haven't watched any SFL games, because we mention it literally every game.
Wait, there's a convention?
Book your tickets. Book your room. It's going to be something special, and it's going to feature something that has never been seen before at any SFL convention, because it hasn't existed until just recently, but it's something that's frequently been asked for in the league, and that is an SFL Championship Trophy. And I know that it exists because it's right there, and you can't see it because it's going to be at the convention. But I can assure you, I can put your minds all at ease, it is currently basking in the glow of a giant LED Mexico City Aztec sign. So we'll keep it safe for you. We'll see who gets added onto it.
I will say
24.
It's a thing of beauty. Makes me regret selling my team just looking at this magnificent. Even though I probably would never ever was going to get one because I'm terrible, but it's a thing of beauty. You guys will love it.
It's got every championship matchup from the past on there with the winner, the date, the score. I'm not going to describe it anymore because I want people to be surprised. But you've got to go to the convention if you want to see it in person. It'll be at this convention and every convention going forward. So if you want to see the SFL Championship Trophy, head to Baltimore, head to the conventions, come hang out with us. It'll be a good time. Let's get into our picks. Gerald, we have made 143 picks, and we are tied at 88 and 55.
I don't know how this is possible.
How is that even? We've only got 3 picks left, so listen, I don't know. I picked down the home line last week. You picked Fort Worth to win over Washington. I almost did.
I almost got it.
So I'm glad I ended up picking Washington because you'd still be ahead of me. But we've only got 2 picks to make tonight. We'll see if we pick anybody any different or if we're going to be guaranteed to go into next week tied up. Vancouver at Washington. Who do you got?
I have to go with Vancouver for all the reasons I mentioned. They're #1 in a lot of things, and they're #1 in a lot of things for a reason. I do think they're going to go into Washington. Washington hopefully won't outcoach themselves like they did early on in the season, but I do think Vancouver has the defensive strength to slow down that offense, and they also have the offensive firepower to best that Washington defense. So I think Vancouver takes it.
Yeah, 2 of the best teams in the league. Obviously, all 4 of these teams are. I'm also going to go with Vancouver. It's nothing against Washington. It's just how I see Vancouver playing, how I see Washington playing. I think Vancouver's going to get the edge. I think it's going to be a much closer game than it was in Week 7, but give me Vancouver to get the win. Mexico City at Baltimore.
This one was a tough one here. Everybody knows I love Mexico City because my boy does great things, defending champ.
But I noticed you're wearing red tonight.
But Baltimore scares me, and they're playing at home.
They are.
And we know what it was. And last time Mexico City went to Baltimore, 3-point game.
3 points, 23-20.
Baltimore seemingly, in my opinion, has gotten better since then.
Yep.
And I do think it's going to be a tough road for Mexico City. I think Baltimore ekes it out with another 3-point win.
All right, I think you're dead wrong, and I hate you. But that's my pick. Mexico City, go Aztecs. Listen, it's going to be a tough game. It could come down to a coin flip. It could come down to a coin flip in overtime. Who knows? I mean, anything can happen. Both of these games are going to be close. Both of these games are going to be great. That's all the time that we've got. This is the last show of just our own for the season. We will be back for another hybrid show. We'll have another opening act for the championship game. Looking forward to it. Special thank you to Cameron Irvine all season long for producing for us. Special thank you to Jeffrey Daggs for helping us with some production tonight. And, of course, once again to Ron Haynes for being there with us all season long. I'm Mike Daggs. He's Gerald Smith. This has been the Matt Willson SFL Kickoff Show. Stay tuned. We've got some great games coming up for you right after this. Don't go anywhere.